So today let's answer an age-old question. Should you buy this year's regular iPhone or last year's Pro iPhone instead? I know the choice last year was pretty simple because the iPhone 14 was basically an iPhone 13s. Actually, scrap that. It was even smaller than an S update because there was no new SoC inside, and so you were better off going with the 13 Pro. But I don't think that's the case this year. There are actually a few big reasons to go with the 15 instead, and so let's break down the differences. Beginning with the design, I feel like this is the year where the regular iPhones have finally caught up with the Pro phones when it comes to the look and feel, because we finally have a matte finish on the back, the dynamic island, thinner bezels that match the 14 Pro's bezels, and honestly, apart from the dual cameras on the back of the 15, these phones on the face of it are very similar. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. If anything, the design is actually slightly better with the 15 because with the iPhone 12 to 14 we had sharp corners, which made these phones not so comfortable in the hand, and while the 15 does fix this with a slightly more rounded chassis. Now I do want to mention, this really only makes a difference when caseless. Both actually feel quite similar in a case, but regardless, any upgrade comfort-wise is always appreciated. And for those who want to live life on the edge and want to use their new iPhone caseless, the 15 definitely feels a lot better in the hand. Also, the matte aluminium sides just look a lot cleaner in my opinion and complement the matte finish on the back of the device, whereas the 14 Pro has glossy stainless steel that gets very mucky real quick. And if you're after any snazzy colours, you're only getting that with the 15 because the 14 Pro in comparison comes in pretty tame colours, though to be fair, the 15's colours are pretty pale in the first place. Now the final design change is a big one because we finally have USB-C on iPhone 15. Yes, after many years of consumers begging Apple to include this, they were gracious enough to finally give us this and totally weren't forced by a government. But jokes aside, I'm sure this alone is going to be a big reason to get the 15 over the 14 Pro because USB-C is everywhere, guys. However, I'm actually in a minority where I couldn't care less about the new port, and so this change does not bother me personally, but I know for a fact there's only 5 of us who actually was fine with the Lightning port, so USB-C is a welcome change. Materials wise, there is a big difference between these phones because while they both have ceramic shield, the Pro phone does have a stainless steel chassis compared to aluminium on the regular phone. Now I know for many years, stainless steel has been a staple of the Pro phones and is supposed to be the superior material choice, but really, what is the upside? Because yes, it doesn't dent as easily I guess, but it does have a horrible glossy finish and also makes the phone incredibly heavy. It feels like a gym workout trying to use this phone. And so yes, I think aluminium and the rounder corners are a massive upgrade with the 15. Both are also IP68 rated by the way, so if you do accidentally drop your phone in the toilet for whatever reason, you should be fine. Moving on to the display, there's really only 2 differences, and that's the always on display and 120Hz. Now I know for the techies, the lack of a high refresh rate panel on the 15 is a deal breaker that makes it a massive scam, but I didn't really notice much of a difference in terms of day-to-day usage. Yes, if I put the phones side by side, there is a difference, but no one uses 2 phones side by side, and so when I put my 14 Pro away and solely just used the 15 for regular usage, I quickly forgot about the 60Hz panel on this. Honestly, don't think this is much of an issue, and the same goes for the lack of an always on display because I actually turned this off on my 14 Pro Max because it was using so much battery life. I didn't care or notice the 15 not having this. And like I said guys, these are the only changes. So more importantly for me, the 15 also packs the same great 1000 nits of brightness for typical use, 1600 nits for HDR content, and a whopping 2000 nits of brightness outdoors. The outdoor brightness especially is a game changer for the regular iPhones. It finally makes the phones viewable in sunlight. Now yes, because I live in the UK, we only get sunlight once or twice a year, but occasionally when there is a bit of sun, I do appreciate the higher brightness. And before you say it, no, I actually don't notice a phone overheating as such when it's pumping out 2000 nits of brightness. So yeah, this is much more useful than 120Hz. I said that, deal with it. Performance wise, you do have the new A16 Bionic in the iPhone 15, which isn't actually all that new since it's the same SoC from iPhone 14 Pro. Now, I do kind of hate this new trend of the regular phones getting last year's SoC, because in previous years, you could at least get slightly better performance by going with the newer regular phone, but that's no longer the case. It's not the biggest issue though, because the 14 Pro was excellent performance-wise, and I've also had no issues with the 15. Both of these should stay fast for years, and they both have 6 gigs of RAM, which in my opinion is plenty enough for iOS. I've run into no RAM issues. They manage things in the background pretty well. Moving to the camera, on the face of it, one might assume the 14 Pro is better, because while the 15 does gain a 48 megapixel main lens, the sensor itself is smaller than the one on the 15 and 14 Pro, but because a lot of the camera performance comes down to software at the end of the day, you don't see much of a difference because the computational skills of the 15 are so good. For one, the shots are binned down to 24 megapixels by default instead of 12 megapixels on the 14 Pro, and yes, you do actually pick up on a huge difference in terms of detail when you zoom in. Now yes, I know you can shoot in the 48 megapixel high format on the iPhone 14 Pro, but that does disable live photos, which I do actually like having, so yes, I would still prefer the 24 megapixel modes, and only the 15 has that. Not only that, but Smart HDR5 also makes a big difference. We've all been complaining for a while now that Smart HDR4 on the 14 and 13 produced overprocessed images that would sometimes look like hot garbage. Skies especially would be overexposed, and thankfully I'm seeing less of that with the 15, and so these changes are very nice. However, if you're a true professional who wants to tune your photos later, then of course, only the 14 Pro has Pro RAW support, and also 1TB option to store more photos, though let's be honest, a very small minority of consumers are actually going to use those features. I mean, I'm a techie, and I have never once touched Pro RAW because I'd rather let the phone do everything for me. Now, fortunately, the ultra-wide on the 15 is unchanged from the iPhone 14 and 13 and 12 and also 11. So you get no macro support here, which the pros have had for years, and while you can get decent shots in good lighting conditions, it does suffer in medium and low light conditions and produces a softer image. The LiDAR sensor on the Pros also comes in handy for night mode portraits. Thankfully, the front-facing camera is exactly the same on the 15, and I love the autofocus tech the 14 had, so yes, it's just as good on the 15. Video-wise, both produce very good footage. I've been using my iPhone as a B-roll camera for this channel, so yes, that should tell you they're great for recording footage, and they also offer cinematic mode and also action modes, though only the 14 Pro offers ProRes, which is the codec professionals usually prefer. Now, I'll be honest guys, I don't think this is very useful on the 14 Pros, because remember, these ProRes files are going to be massive, and so transferring this over the pathetic lightning port with its very, very, very slow USB 2.0 speeds is gonna be a pain, and it's frankly not worth it. If you want ProRes, get the 15 Pros with their faster USB-C port. Also remember, the 128GB base version of the 14 Pros capped at 1080p ProRes. So yeah, this is not worth it guys. Just stick to regular video footage. Also, something I've quickly come to appreciate with the 15 are next-gen portraits. Now, as I said earlier, the portrait mode itself is very similar between these devices, but the new thing the 15 does is that it automatically collects the data the phone needs for portrait modes, and so you can now turn most photos into portrait in post, and that is super clutch guys. I no longer have to manually put the phone in portrait modes. It just does everything for me and works like magic. Now, Apple has given the 14 Pros the ability to refocus your portraits in post, but only the 15 automatically collects it in the first place. And yes, you're probably thinking, what's stopping Apple from giving all these features to the 14 Pro that has the exact same SoC inside? Well, let's be honest, Apple wants you to buy the new phone, so don't expect Apple to give us these new features on older iPhones. They've done this in the past. We have to deal with it, but that's why I do prefer the iPhone 15's camera experience for these new software features. Now, I believe the iPhone 15 does have a slightly new modem inside, but I haven't seen a difference in terms of Wi-Fi and 5G performance. Both are rock solid in this aspect. The iPhone 15 does have the new U2 chip, which of course is going to come in handy for some new features like precision finding for Find My Friends, but apart from that, connectivity wise, they're basically the same. And the same goes for the speakers and mics, both are very great in this aspect as well. Finally, coming to battery life, Apple on their site says the Pro phones have much longer endurance in terms of video playback, but honestly, when it comes to regular usage, the regular 15 absolutely destroys the 14 Pro. Now yes, I know the 14 Pro Max in question has a degraded battery, but of course, I do have screenshots of the SOT I was getting back at launch, and it's only 1 hour better than the regular 15. Yes, you heard me right. The smaller 6.1-inch iPhone 15 is only an hour behind the 14 Pro Max, and so if you compare the 14 Pro and 15 with their respective sizes, the regular and plus size will undoubtedly beat the Pro and Pro Max in this aspect, and that's a big reason why you should get the 15 instead. Now, if you were hoping that USB-C was going to improve charging speeds, no, that's not the case. They both charge up to 50% in 30 minutes, and if I'm gonna be honest guys, I'm not too fussed about the lack of charging speed upgrades, because the 15 does get you through the day pretty easily, so of course, you're likely gonna be charging overnight anyways, in which case you don't need 100-watt charging speeds. 20 watts is plenty fine. Both also have MagSafe as well, so of course, you can use that instead if you wish. So that's all the main differences guys, and ultimately this is my verdict. If you find the 14 Pro and 15 at the same price, I would get the 15. I know this might seem like an unpopular opinion, and you're probably thinking, why the heck does this guy think this? But honestly, I think the camera improvements, and also the much more reliable battery life with the 15 makes a massive difference, and makes it the better iPhone, with the icing on the cake for many being the Type-C port. However, if you do find the 14 Pro for less, which you probably will because it's going to continue dropping down in price, then by all means save your cash and go with a 14 Pro instead, because at the end of the day both are very solid iPhones, you can't go wrong with both of these. The core experience is going to be very similar, so of course, go with whatever's cheapest. I'm assuming that's going to be the 14 Pro because it's dropping down in price, but if it's the same price, I would actually go with the 15. And of course, if you're a 120Hz snob, you're not going to listen to my advice anyways, just go buy the 14 Pro, or even the 13 Pro to be honest. That's also a good buy on the used market. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.